German Shepherd keeps stealing all the neighbors' kittens. The reason shocks the owner. The autumn rain pelted against the windows of Ben Turner's modest suburban home, creating a rhythmic symphony that usually lulled both him and Rex, his German Shepherd partner, into peaceful evening routines. Tonight was different. Rex's ears perked up at precisely 8:47 p.m., his body tensing with an alertness that Ben recognized from their years together in the K-9 unit. "What is it, buddy?" Ben asked, setting aside the case files he'd been reviewing. After 8 years on the force, he'd learned to trust Rex's instincts implicitly. The dog's behavior had saved lives during numerous operations, and now, even off-duty, that same intensity radiated from his companion. Without warning, Rex bolted to the back door, pawing at it with unusual urgency. Ben hesitated only briefly before grabbing his raincoat and flashlight. The moment he opened the door, Rex disappeared into the darkness, heading straight for the immaculate property of their neighbor, Carter Walsh. Walsh's Victorian mansion stood as a testament to his success as a prominent cat breeder, his Bengal cats winning numerous championships across the country. Ben had always found it odd how little interaction Walsh had with the neighborhood, his property protected by high fences and sophisticated security systems. Following Rex through the rain, Ben called out softly, "Rex, here, boy," but his commands went unheeded. Another unusual occurrence that set off warning bells in his mind. He reached the fence line just as Rex emerged from a gap beneath the ornate iron barrier, something tiny and wet clutched carefully in his mouth. "What have you got there, partner?" Ben knelt down, his heart clenching as Rex gently deposited a tiny kitten into his waiting hands. The creature couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, its gray fur matted and cold from the rain. As Ben cradled it inside his jacket, the kitten released a weak mew that seemed to pierce the night. The sound of gravel crunching underfoot alerted them to approaching footsteps. Carter Walsh emerged from the shadows, his tall frame illuminated by security lights that suddenly flooded the area. "Officer Turner," he said, his voice carrying the polished accent of old money. "Is there a problem?" Ben straightened, protecting the kitten with his body. "Found this little one out in the rain. Looks like one of yours, Mr. Walsh." He studied the man's face carefully, years of police work having taught him to read micro-expressions. Walsh's features remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes' annoyance. "Perhaps, or something darker." "Impossible. All my cats are accounted for. Premium breeding stock, you understand. Every animal is tracked and monitored." He paused, adjusting his expensive wool coat. "Must be a stray. You know how they wander in sometimes." Rex growled softly, a sound Ben had rarely heard outside of their most dangerous police encounters. The dog's reaction, combined with Walsh's dismissive attitude, set off every internal alarm Ben possessed. "Right," Ben replied, maintaining a professional demeanor. "Well, I'll make sure this little one gets proper care." He backed away slowly, noting how Walsh's gaze followed them until they disappeared into the darkness. Back home, as Ben toweled off the shivering kitten and prepared a makeshift bed with a heating pad, his mind raced. Something about the entire encounter felt wrong. The kitten's coat, despite its current condition, showed signs of premium breeding. Its features suggested Bengal heritage, Walsh's specialty. "What did you really find out there, Rex?" Ben murmured, watching as his partner settled protectively near the kitten's box. Rex's eyes, intelligent and alert, never left the tiny creature. That night, as rain continued to drum against the windows, Ben made two important calls, one to Sarah Mitchell, the local veterinarian who operated an after-hours emergency service, and another to his partner at the precinct, Detective Lisa Rodriguez. "Lisa, yeah, I know it's late. Listen, I need you to run a background check on Carter Walsh first thing tomorrow. Something's not right here." He watched as Rex finally dozed off, still positioned as a guardian to their tiny rescue. "Call it a hunch, but I think we've stumbled onto something." As Ben finally prepared for bed, the kitten now fed and sleeping soundly. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Years of police work had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct told him that Rex's unusual behavior had opened the door to something far more sinister than a simple case of a stray kitten. He made a mental note to start documenting everything, the date, time, and circumstances of finding the kitten, Walsh's reaction, and Rex's unusual behavior. If there was something going on at that mansion, Ben was determined to uncover it. For now, though, he had a new responsibility, a tiny life that Rex had deemed important enough to rescue. Despite the risks, looking out his bedroom window at Walsh's illuminated mansion, Ben wondered what secrets lay behind those well-maintained walls. Whatever they were, he had a feeling Rex would lead him to the truth, one way or another. Detective Lisa Rodriguez's voice crackled through Ben's phone early the next morning, her tone carrying the weight of disturbing discoveries. "Ben, you might want to sit down for this," she began, as Ben cradled his coffee mug while watching Rex pace restlessly near the back door. "Carter Walsh isn't just your average wealthy cat breeder. There's a pattern here: 3 different cities, 3 different breeding operations, and in each location, there were complaints filed that mysteriously disappeared." Ben's jaw tightened as he listened to Lisa detail Walsh's history, allegations of animal cruelty that never stuck, witnesses who suddenly changed their statements, and local officials who seemed surprisingly eager to look the other way. "He's got money, Ben," Lisa warned, "and people with money usually have friends in high places." Ben glanced at the rescued kitten, now curled up in a plush bed he'd purchased the previous night, its tiny form finally peaceful after a visit to Dr. Mitchell's clinic. The vet's words echoed in his mind. This kitten shows signs of selective breeding, but also neglect. Something doesn't add up. The sound of Rex's urgent barking pulled Ben from his thoughts. It was the same distinctive bark from the night before, and Ben's heart rate quickened. "Lisa, I'll call you back," he said, already moving toward the back door. Once again, Rex led him to Walsh's property, this time in broad daylight. Ben's police instincts kicked in as he observed his surroundings more carefully. The mansion's grounds were immaculate, with carefully maintained gardens that seemed designed to keep people at a distance. Security cameras tracked their movement, their red lights blinking in silent warning. Rex disappeared through the same gap in the fence, emerging moments later with another kitten, this one in even worse condition than the first. Its white and brown fur was matted with what looked like chemical burns, and its eyes were crusted shut. "Dios mio," a soft voice gasped behind them. Ben turned to find a middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform, her hand pressed to her mouth in horror. "Maria Suarez," she introduced herself quickly, glancing nervously at the mansion. "I clean for Mr. Walsh, but—" She hesitated, her eyes darting between Ben and the kitten. "Please, you must help them." Before Ben could respond, the mansion's front door opened. Maria quickly busied herself with the garden tools nearby, her hands trembling slightly. Walsh emerged, flanked by 2 men Ben hadn't seen before, private security, judging by their stance and attire. "Officer Turner," Walsh called out, his voice carrying a hint of steel beneath its polished surface. "Twice in 2 days. I'm beginning to worry about your fascination with my property." Ben maintained his professional composure, despite the anger building in his chest. "Just walking my dog, Mr. Walsh. He seems to have a nose for finding abandoned kittens." Walsh's smile didn't reach his eyes. "As I mentioned yesterday, all my cats are accounted for, though I must insist you keep your dog away from my property. He could disturb my valuable breeding stock." One of the security men stepped forward, his jacket shifting to reveal a holstered weapon. The message was clear. Ben nodded slowly, maintaining eye contact with Walsh. "Of course, just doing my civic duty when I find animals in distress." He turned to leave, but caught Maria's eye one last time. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod before returning to her work. Back home, Ben examined the new kitten carefully. The injuries were deliberate, chemical burns consistent with harsh cleaning agents. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Walsh's company just made a large donation to the police department's charity fund. "Chief asking questions about your interest in him." Ben's jaw clenched. The game was escalating quickly. He photographed the kitten's injuries and began a detailed report, knowing he needed to build a solid case before making any official moves. That evening, Maria appeared at his door, looking over her shoulder nervously. "I can only stay a minute," she whispered. "But you need to know, the basement, it's full of cages. Hundreds of cats. He breeds them for specific traits, and the ones that don't meet his standards." She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. "I've tried reporting it before, but nothing happens. The inspectors come, they talk to Mr. Walsh, they leave with envelopes full of cash." Ben's mind raced with the implications. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you and your dog." She glanced at Rex, who sat alertly nearby. "You're the first ones who've actually saved any of them. The ones he discards." She pulled a small notebook from her pocket. "I've been keeping records, dates, numbers. What happens to the cats that disappear? Take it. But please, be careful." The last person who asked too many questions. Maria left the sentence unfinished, hurrying away into the gathering dusk. Ben spent hours reviewing Maria's notebook, his police training helping him recognize the detailed documentation of a systematic operation. Walsh wasn't just breeding cats. He was running a sophisticated enterprise that treated living creatures as disposable commodities. Rex lay at his feet, occasionally whining and looking toward Walsh's property. "I know, buddy," Ben murmured. "We'll stop him, but we have to do this right." He began formulating a plan, knowing he'd need irrefutable evidence to overcome Walsh's money and influence. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Lisa. "Chief wants to meet tomorrow regarding your harassment of a prominent citizen." Ben stared at the message, then at the two rescued kittens sleeping peacefully in their bed. The stakes were clear, his career against Walsh's operation. But looking at Rex's determined expression, Ben knew there was only one choice. They would see this through, no matter the cost. Outside, the lights of Walsh's mansion blazed against the darkening sky, and somewhere in that basement, more cats awaited rescue. Ben patted Rex's head, drawing strength from his partner's unwavering loyalty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, they had saved another life and taken one step closer to exposing the truth that lurked behind those manicured gardens and security cameras. Ben sat across from Chief Henderson, maintaining his composure as the older man leafed through the complaint filed by Carter Walsh. The morning sunlight filtering through the office windows did little to warm the chill in the room. "Turner, you're one of my best officers," Henderson began, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and concern. "But this stops now. Walsh's lawyers are threatening harassment charges, and his contributions to this department's programs are significant." Ben leaned forward, placing Maria's notebook on the desk. "Chief, I have documented evidence of animal cruelty, potential health code violations, and what appears to be a pattern of bribing officials." Henderson barely glanced at the notebook before sliding it back. "Evidence collected while trespassing on private property? From an unreliable witness who's probably just a disgruntled employee? You're walking a dangerous line, Turner." The conversation was interrupted by Ben's phone buzzing. A text from his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Your dog is barking like crazy. Something's wrong." Ben's heart raced as he excused himself, ignoring Henderson's warning shout. The drive home felt endless, his mind spinning with possibilities. Rex never barked without reason. Pulling into his driveway, Ben found Rex frantically pawing at the back door, his usual disciplined demeanor replaced by urgent distress. The moment Ben opened the door, Rex bolted toward Walsh's property. But this time, something was different. There was commotion at the mansion, moving trucks in the driveway, men in suits supervising as workers carried boxes from the basement. Through the gap in the fence, Ben watched as Rex maneuvered through the chaos, emerging minutes later with not one, but two kittens, their tiny bodies limp but breathing. A shout went up from the property. "Hey, stop right there." One of Walsh's security men approached, hand reaching inside his jacket. Ben quickly scooped up Rex and the kittens, his police training kicking in as he retreated strategically. Back home, as he tended to the new rescues, his phone rang. "Lisa. Ben, you need to hear this. Walsh is moving his operation. Got a tip about a shipment heading to an international buyer. These cats aren't just for shows. They're being sold on the black market for thousands each." The pieces started falling into place. A knock at the door made Ben freeze. Through the peephole, he saw Maria, her face bruised, hands shaking. "They know I talked to you," she whispered as he let her in. "Mr. Walsh, he's not just getting rid of imperfect cats. He's breeding them for specific traits, selling them to collectors who don't care about legality. The basement. I saw things today. She broke down, pulling out her phone to show Ben photos she'd managed to take, rows of cages, documentation of experimental breeding programs, and something worse, evidence of genetic manipulation that went far beyond standard breeding practices. He's leaving the country tonight, Maria continued, her voice steadying. Everything is being moved. The cats that don't make the cut. She couldn't finish the sentence. Ben's mind raced. The moving trucks weren't just relocating the operation, they were destroying evidence. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number with photos of him and Rex, taken outside Walsh's property, followed by a simple message, "Stop now, or your career won't be the only thing you lose." Rex growled at the window, and Ben caught a glimpse of a dark SUV passing slowly by his house. The threat was clear, but it only strengthened his resolve. "Maria, we need to get you somewhere safe." "Lisa," he spoke into his phone, "I need backup. Unofficial. And contact Dr. Mitchell. She can document the condition of these kittens as evidence." As he spoke, Rex's ears perked up again, his body tensing. Through the window, Ben saw more moving trucks arriving at Walsh's property. They were running out of time. "There's a timing chip," Maria suddenly remembered, "in his office computer. He tracks all the shipments, all the sales. If you could get access." The sound of breaking glass interrupted her. A brick lay on Ben's living room floor, wrapped in a note, "Final warning." Ben moved quickly, getting Maria and the kittens to safety in his bedroom. "Lisa, we move now. Walsh is cleaning house, and we're losing our window." He checked his service weapon and looked at Rex, seeing the same determination in his partner's eyes that he felt. "Chief Henderson might have his hands tied, but we don't." Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across Walsh's property. Ben knew that somewhere in that mansion was enough evidence to bring down not just Walsh, but an entire network of illegal breeding operations. The moving trucks, the threats, the attempted cover-up. It all pointed to something bigger than he'd initially suspected. Rex stood alert beside him, ready as always to face whatever came next. They had started this journey by saving one tiny kitten, and now they were on the verge of uncovering a criminal enterprise that spanned continents. Ben checked his watch, knowing Walsh's flight was scheduled for midnight. They had 4 hours to gather enough evidence to stop him, 4 hours to justify every risk they'd taken, 4 hours to prove that sometimes doing the right thing meant standing alone against powerful enemies. As darkness fell, Ben made his final preparations, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just his fate, but the lives of countless innocent creatures trapped in Walsh's cruel operation. The security cameras around Walsh's mansion swiveled uselessly in the darkness, their circuits temporarily disabled by Lisa's contact in cyber crimes. Ben moved silently through the shadows, Rex at his heel, both hyper-aware of the activity still buzzing around the property. Moving trucks rumbled in the circular driveway, their headlights sweeping across manicured lawns as workers continued loading crates. Under the supervision of Walsh's security team, the basement access door stood partially open, a stroke of luck created by the chaos of hasty evacuation. Ben checked his watch, 9:47 p.m. 2 hours and 13 minutes until Walsh's scheduled departure. Inside, the basement's clinical sterility struck Ben first. Stainless steel cages stacked floor to ceiling, most now empty but some still containing frightened cats. The air carried the sharp sting of disinfectant masking something fouler. Rex's low growl drew Ben's attention to a door marked Research Laboratory. The electronic lock yielded to the emergency override code Maria had provided, and Ben's blood ran cold at what lay inside. Laboratory equipment filled the room, along with detailed genetic charts and medical records. This wasn't just a breeding operation, it was a full-scale genetic modification facility. Files scattered across a desk revealed the truth. Walsh wasn't just breeding show cats. He was creating designer pets for wealthy clients, experimenting with genetic traits regardless of the animal's suffering. A noise from above sent Ben and Rex into the shadows. Footsteps descended the stairs, accompanied by Walsh's cultured voice. "Make sure everything in the lab is destroyed. Nothing can connect us to the program." Ben activated his phone's recording function, Heart pounding as Walsh continued, "The buyers in Dubai won't wait. The modified specimens need to be ready for transport in 1 hour." Another voice responded, one Ben recognized as Chief Henderson's. "You promised this would be clean, Walsh." Turner's getting too close. Walsh's laugh carried no humor. "Your officer won't be a problem much longer. My team is handling it." Ben's jaw clenched as he documented everything. Knowing each word further revealed the corruption's reach. Rex suddenly tensed, alerting Ben seconds before the lab door burst open. Two security guards entered, weapons drawn. "Police, freeze," Ben commanded, his service weapon steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. The guards hesitated just long enough for Rex to spring into action, taking down the nearest threat while Ben engaged the second. The commotion drew more attention. Walsh appeared in the doorway, his polished exterior cracking as he took in the scene. "Officer Turner, such a disappointment. You could have simply looked the other way, enjoyed a comfortable career." Behind Walsh, Chief Henderson stood with shame evident on his face, his own weapon trained uncertainly on Ben. "It's over, Walsh," Ben declared, keeping his aim steady. "The evidence is already being transmitted. Your whole operation is exposed." Walsh's composed facade shattered. "Kill them both," he ordered, turning to flee. Chaos erupted in the confined space. Rex launched himself at the remaining guard while Ben dove for cover behind laboratory equipment. Gunshots echoed off steel surfaces as Ben worked his way toward the exit. Through his earpiece, Lisa's voice crackled. "Ben, backup's 3 minutes out. State Police and FBI are en route." Henderson's voice cut through the chaos. "Ben, don't make me do this." Ben met his chief's eyes across the room. "You already did this, sir. Every time you took his money, every time you looked the other way." A crash from above signaled more complications. Walsh's voice carried down the stairs. "The transport's ready. Burn it all." Smoke began filtering through the ventilation system as Ben realized Walsh's endgame: destroy the evidence and everyone who could expose him. Emergency sprinklers activated, adding to the confusion. Rex's bark alerted Ben to movement, Walsh making a break for the exit. Ben pursued, leaving Henderson to face his own conscience. Through smoke and chaos, Ben followed Walsh up to the main floor, where flames were already consuming records and evidence. Walsh's security team had abandoned him, leaving the mansion's owner to face the consequences alone. "It's not just about the cats, is it?" Ben called out, maintaining pursuit as Walsh headed for the garage. "The genetic experiments, the international buyers. What were you really creating in that lab?" Walsh spun, desperation replacing his usual polish. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. Those experiments are worth millions. The future of designer pets, perfectly engineered companions for those who can afford them." The sound of approaching sirens finally penetrated the chaos. Walsh lunged for a nearby door, but Rex was faster, taking him down with practiced precision. As Ben secured Walsh in handcuffs, emergency vehicles flooded the property. FBI agents swarmed the burning mansion while firefighters battled the blaze. Lisa appeared through the smoke, tablet in hand. "We got it all, Ben. The files, the shipping records, everything. Maria's photos and your recordings give us enough to take down not just Walsh, but his entire network." In the garage, agents discovered cages ready for transport, each containing cats with visible genetic modifications, extra toes, oddly shaped ears, iridescent fur. Chief Henderson emerged from the mansion in custody, head bowed as his career ended in disgrace. As dawn broke over the chaotic scene, Ben watched animal control carefully removing cats from the remaining cages. Rex sat alertly beside him, both of them exhausted but satisfied. The mansion, now secured by federal agents, would yield more evidence of Walsh's crimes. But the immediate threat was over. Maria appeared, escorted by witness protection agents. "They want me to testify," she said softly, "about everything I saw, everything I documented." Ben nodded. "You helped expose something much bigger than any of us imagined." He looked at the rescued cats being evaluated by veterinary teams. "These animals will finally have a chance at normal lives." Emergency vehicles began departing as the situation stabilized. Walsh and his conspirators were headed for federal custody. facing charges that would keep them occupied for years to come. Ben knelt beside Rex, scratching his loyal partner's ears. "Good boy," he whispered. "You started all this by saving one kitten. Look what it led to." The morning sun cast long shadows across the mansion's grounds as forensic teams continued their work. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, other emergencies, other calls for justice. But for now, Ben and Rex had done their part, exposing a darkness that had festered behind wealth and influence, proving that sometimes the smallest act of compassion could unravel the grandest schemes. 6 months after the dramatic takedown of Carter Walsh's operation, Ben stood in the transformed grounds of the Victorian mansion, watching as construction workers installed the new sign, Second Chance Animal Sanctuary. The spring sunshine highlighted the property's transformation from a place of darkness to one of hope. Rex sat beside him, gray beginning to pepper his muzzle, but his eyes still alert as they watched volunteers moving about the renovated space. The federal investigation had revealed the full scope of Walsh's operation: genetic experimentation labs in 3 countries, a network of corrupt officials, and hundreds of animals subjected to cruel modifications to satisfy wealthy clients' desires for unique pets. Ben's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Final sentencing today. Walsh got 20 years. Henderson took a plea deal for testimony." The justice system had worked, albeit slowly, grinding through the mountain of evidence that began with one German shepherd's determination to save a kitten. Inside the mansion's converted main hall, Dr. Mitchell supervised the new veterinary clinic, specifically designed to care for cats recovering from genetic manipulation. The first kitten Rex had rescued, now named Hope, had become the clinic's unofficial mascot, her resilient spirit inspiring the staff and visitors alike. Maria, now protected by witness protection, but still involved with the sanctuary, approached Ben with clipboard in hand. "The last group of Walsh's cats arrived from the Dubai facility this morning," she reported, her voice stronger now, confident. 23 in total, all showing signs of genetic modification, but stable. The international investigation she'd helped spark had led to arrests across 3 continents, shutting down a network of illegal breeding operations. Ben nodded, watching as volunteers gentle-handled the new rivals. "How's the rehabilitation program going?" Maria's face brightened. "Better than expected. The genetic modifications can't be reversed, but most of the cats are adapting well to normal lives. The trauma therapy is helping." She paused, emotion crossing her face. "I never thought, when I first took that job with Walsh, that it would lead to this." The sanctuary had become a symbol of transformation, not just for the animals but for everyone involved. Ben's role in exposing the operation had led to changes in animal welfare laws and increased scrutiny of breeding facilities nationwide. Rex's weekly visits had become a highlight for the recovering cats, his gentle presence helping them overcome their fear of other animals. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A school bus was arriving, part of the sanctuary's new educational program, teaching children about animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. Ben watched as excited elementary school students filed in, their eyes wide at the sight of cats with unusual features. Rather than being exploited as curiosities, these cats now served as ambassadors for their species, their stories teaching valuable lessons about compassion and justice. The sanctuary's success had exceeded all expectations. Funded by seized assets from Walsh's operation and supported by donations from around the world, people touched by the story of a devoted police dog and his handler fighting corruption to save innocent animals had opened their hearts and wallets. Ben's phone buzzed again, this time a message from the FBI task force he'd helped establish. "New case developing in Montreal. Similar pattern. Need your expertise." He smiled, knowing that his and Rex's work had evolved into something larger than their original mission. They'd become consultants on animal welfare cases, their experience helping other agencies identify and stop abuse. Before it reached the scale of Walsh's operation, a familiar meow drew his attention. Hope had wandered over, now fully grown and healthy, her once matted fur gleaming as she rubbed against Rex's leg. The German shepherd, ever gentle, lowered his head to nuzzle her, a reminder of how this journey began. Officer Turner, a young volunteer, approached. The documentary crew is ready for your interview. The story of Rex's rescues and the subsequent investigation had captured public attention, leading to a documentary about animal welfare and corruption. Ben had agreed to participate, hoping their experience would inspire others to take action against abuse. As he prepared for the interview, Ben reflected on the changes the past months had brought. The corruption that had protected Walsh had been exposed and eliminated. Chief Henderson's replacement had implemented strict oversight procedures for donations and relationships with prominent citizens. Most importantly, hundreds of cats had been rescued and rehabilitated, finding loving homes with families who valued them for who they were, not what they could be modified to become. Maria joined him for the interview, her testimony having been crucial in securing Walsh's conviction. Together, they shared the story of how one dog's compassion had unveiled a criminal enterprise and sparked a movement for change. The documentary would ensure that the lessons learned wouldn't be forgotten. As evening approached, Ben and Rex made their final rounds of the sanctuary. The converted mansion, once a place of secrets and suffering, now rang with the sounds of contented cats and dedicated caregivers. In the special needs wing, cats with various genetic modifications received specialized care. Their unique appearances no longer a curse, but a testament to survival. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases to investigate, and new animals to save. But tonight, watching Rex settle among his feline friends, Ben knew they had achieved something remarkable. They had proven that justice could prevail against wealth and influence, that compassion could overcome cruelty, and that the bond between humans and animals could change the world. The sanctuary stood as a living monument to these truths, a place where second chances were born from the darkest circumstances. As the sun set over the transformed property, Ben scratched Rex's ears, whispering, "Well done, partner, well done indeed."